Jake Baird.
Andrew Jones.
What is up?
What is up with you?
Oh, man, I was just listening to Eminem. Will the real Slim Shady please stand up?
Of course you were. I haven't heard that song since I was in like 6th grade.
You remember Mark Baumgartner, right?
Of course.
Oh, gee. So we saw him at the wedding last week, and he actually, said the SNOOP, D-O-double-G-C, just to kind of humor me. I was like, oh, yes.
Did you solicit that, or did he just do it on his own?
Oh, I solicited it. But I was like, hey, man, this is one of these things when I was a kid. Remember this? And he's like, I didn't remember any of it, but I'll do it for you. And then he just started doing it. And I was like, oh, yes.
It's some poor guy fucking working at the, Jack in the Box drive-thru at 2 a.m. Just getting harassed by a drunk Mark Baumgartner. Pretending to be Snoop Dogg.
I brought it up because I was like, well, we're going to have Aiden, our kid, right? And, going to concerts with him, when he's like 8, 9, 10, 11, and then having friends like you. And he's like, you can only wish you have friends like me, Andrew. Oh, you're not wrong, Mark.
Speaking of concerts, dude, I got tickets to see Guns N' Roses next month. Mammoth, Wolfgang Van Halen is opening for them.
Oh, really? That's badass.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about buying tickets to see Lita Ford and Vince Neil, and that's going to be in October. And then next year I'm doing the big hair band show, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett. And then Sammy Hagar is doing a residency at the Strat in Vegas in October and November. I'm going to be out of town the first weekend of it, but the second 2 weekends of it, I've got tickets the first night, and then the third weekend I've got tickets to both nights. So I'm seeing him 3 times in November.
Holy shit. That's badass. Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's like we didn't do anything during the pandemic, and now we're going ham. I mean, we already have one concert we're going to, and it was crazy. And, of course, it's country concert, country rock. It's Garth Brooks. So he's all right. But effectively, my mother-in-law went online, and within 10 minutes, immediately sold out. Was that like the same with you for all these concerts or no?
So the big hair band one, the Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett, they were supposed to tour last year during the summer, and people had bought a bunch of tickets, but then COVID happened, so it didn't really get the chance to sell out. People weren't really sure, so some people canceled their tickets, some people kept them, and they're gonna still respect the tickets from the people who bought them originally. So when it was announced that they had rescheduled the dates for next year, I went and checked, and they had some really good seats. I got Def Leppard meet and greet tickets, dude.
Oh, that's fucking bad. You're gonna go meet a one-handed drummer.
Goddamn right.
I was actually. What was so funny is, so Alyssa and I got sick. Our very first cold after the pandemic. So sorry if I cough, but I'm starting to feel better. Alyssa's kind of on the beginning of this. And, of course, since she's pregnant, the doctor's like, go get a COVID test. Okay, whatever. So we get in the car, and Armageddon It by Def Leppard is on. And it's just like, I just fucking crank that thing, and it just transports me back to the Bronco. Just Armageddon It! It's over and over, just looped over and over again. And I was talking with Alyssa, and I was like, you like Def Leppard? They're okay. And then, of course, it was one of those, like, the local news radio, local terrestrial radio playing, like, 3 songs in a row, Armageddon It, and then Pour Some Sugar on Me. So I fucking love this song. It's like, anybody that isn't even, like, remotely a fan loves Pour Some Sugar on Me.
Of course.
I feel like that's, like, in the middle of, like, their set list. So when you go see them, I bet that's, like, song number 7 or number 8. Because that always gets people fucking riled up no matter if you're a fan or not.
So I've seen Def Leppard 3 times, and Pour Some Sugar on Me is more towards the end of the show, but typically Photograph is the closer.
Oh, Photograph. Oh, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Def Leppard. So Photograph, I mean, all those songs just get me going. Especially Photograph.
Oh, yeah.
Which is hilarious, because now it has, like, some symbology to Nickelback. the meme ban. And it's just so funny. Which is hilarious because, like, they started it, and I would imagine Nickelback, when they were creating the song Photograph, they're like, oh man, we love Def Leppard. We should create, like, a Photograph song. And now, that's a total meme.
Just hoping their Tweenie Bopper fucking fan base wouldn't notice that it was a total ripoff. I mean, the song's really not a ripoff. The title of it's the same, but other than that, there's entirely different songs.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. No. I was thinking about memes lately, and I gotta say, Jake, the memes of Generation Z, right? So the one after us. So we're millennials, Generation Z, right? Mm-hmm. Is that who they are? Their memes are fucking hilarious. I love their memes so much. I mean, if you remember the first memes that we had about 10 years ago, it was like a little dog or the Velociraptor. That one was a really good one. Like... Their memes, they have not only memes, but they have, like, deep-fried memes. Have you seen this?
I have not.
So deep-fried memes is literally, like, you take a picture, and then you just, like, reduce the resolution by, like, the nth degree, and it looks like shit, but they call it deep-fried memes. And I think that's fucking hilarious. Like, all these memes are so good. And... when you talk about the next generation, it's like, oh, is there any hope for them? Like, there's definitely a shitload of hope for Generation Z.
Well, Generation Z is they're saying just slightly more conservative. They're not going to college. They're just getting jobs, and right away they're seeing that they're getting ripped off by taxes and shit. And the other thing too is that progressives aren't really having kids. So,
oh yeah,
I mean, they're having fewer kids than conservatives are. So conservatives are raising more conservatives, and that's why, to an extent, too, that's happening.
I always think that, at least with the birth rate, it's always I think it always trends with, like, how you view your life and the economic trend of your life. So if you're a conservative and you think you're doing well and, like, you're a plumber making $75,000 a year or 60 or whatever, I think you're like, I can have kids, right? I mean, we're definitely, we live in Utah. We feel like we can have a kid because we have a house and, like, we have our shit together. But somebody that's living in San Francisco that's a liberal, making maybe $20 an hour, $17 an hour, whatever it is, I don't think they're fairly comfortable about having a kid at all. I think it's always like the amount of money that you make makes you want to be like, birth control, who fucking cares?
Well, yeah, true. But they also, a lot of them legitimately believe the world is about to end because of climate change.
That's true.
And they're legitimately stressed out about it.
I don't...
They're disgusted by people in a growing population, and they kind of subscribe to this idea that the world is overpopulated and is doomed to die and kill off humanity. So I think that has, at least to an extent, something to do with it too.
Well, I'm glad you brought up climate change because I'm not really like, oh my god, the world is ending at all. I just think that I would move in a different direction with my money and my thought processes to a different part of the country. And we were kind of talking about this last week outside the podcast, where I wanted to go ahead and buy land in Alaska.
But you didn't. You've talked about this before, but you didn't really explain it all that well. So go ahead and explain the logic behind it.
All right. So if the planet is going to go ahead and heat up to 3 degrees Celsius more, that means the temperate zone that's in the the continental United States, well, the temperate zone moves north. Which is fine, because there's a shitload of land north and, well, south of the equator, right? Well, not really south. Australia's fucked. But that's okay. Who cares about Australia? But you have Russia, Alaska, Canada. And I'm not really among the mindset of, like, we're going to solve climate change. I'm more of a pragmatist, right? We talked about this in many podcasts. I would rather say, okay, let me go ahead and get a plot of land, 2 acres or 10 acres or 15 acres, how many acres, right, in Alaska, and I'm going to hedge my bet of if climate change increases to 2 to 3 degrees Celsius in the temperate kind of like climate of, let's say, like Idaho or Utah or even northern Arizona, moves northward, that means the average temperature in Alaska, north of Anchorage, let's say, the land I'm looking at, isn't 50 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. It's like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, during the summer months. And, of course, it's a lot more mild during the winter months. So I'm not really like fuck you kind of mentality. I'm just like, I'll just buy some land. I'll just put a home on it. I don't really see the harm in that, and I don't really see, at least in my line of work, I see other individuals in real estate thinking the same way. They're not going to saying fuck you or fuck you. They're like, let's buy land in Alaska. There's a shitload of land there. Or in northern Canada, where nobody fucking lives. So, or even in Russia. In Russia, that's kind of terrifying, because Russia, if this actually happens, within the next 100 years, Russia's going to become a superpower again, because there's going to be so many refugees from China, the Middle East, that are going to go ahead and want to move there. So that's kind of my thought process.
So basically, you like Alaska because you think it's going to get warmer there.
I like Alaska because, one, it's the United States. And
in the context of climate change, though.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I already liked Alaska, just kind of the idea of it.
Well, even if it doesn't get warmer there, that's not a bad idea, because all these areas are going to start growing sooner or later, and even if it's like 30 years from now, you have a piece of land in Alaska, it's probably not going to be a bad thing to have.
Well, exactly, right? If I have I looked at one piece of land. It was acre and a half, literally road access, power access, but no water access. But it was like full of fucking trees. It's like, okay, well, it's like 10 grand. I can have, a company come down, cut all the trees down, and I'll probably make all my money back, right? So, I don't know. The idea here, though, is like Men in Black, the ending scene where he's talking to, Tommy Lee Jones talking to Will Smith. A person is smart, but people are panicky, crazy, horrible human beings altogether. And I think that's the idea in Alaska, right? If I hedge that bet, I hedge the bet that everybody's not looking at land in Alaska, and it's very true, right? I can buy a plot of land for like $10,000, which maybe in 40 years, if climate change is true, which it's kind of trending, that plot of land could be worth a lot more. So, Don't you want to move north?
To an extent. I mean, I've thought about it. I don't know where I'd want to live ultimately. I love Arizona. I don't know how much time I could spend away from here. But I mean, I would definitely be down to try out Alaska. But I mean, born and raised in the heat, dude. I love it. I can take breaks. I love snow skiing, but I don't know if I could really do like cold. But I don't know. I've never lived anywhere else long term, so I don't know. If things got weird on a societal level or on a climate level, and I mean, you've got me convinced. I'm down to buy some fucking land in Alaska and hold on to it and see what happens, and have like a bug out location to go to if things get weird, or some even just having a house in Alaska to go visit during the summer.
Oh yeah, I've thought about that too. I've looked at houses. And when I looked at this plot of land, not to go really far into it, but it's like an hour and 20-minute drive north of Anchorage, which, if Anchorage developed even further, could be 40 minutes, because the way that this plot of land was, it was up here, Anchorage down here, and the highway goes like this. So you could have a highway that goes above, whatever. But I have a lot of ideas about, like, climate change, and, like, I don't think air travel is going to be as plausible in the future. I think it's going to be Hyperloop travel versus air travel. I think there's always still going to be air travel, but I think the Hyperloop is going to go ahead and connect all the major metropolitan areas, at least in the continental United States, and then the continental Chinese, country as well. But
if they can develop the technology to make that efficient to kind of push away air travel, that's possible. I think you're going to see like a major, to talk about like Russia becoming a superpower, they're making some major economic moves right now to pull themselves away from using the US dollar, and they're partnering with like the BRICS countries, Brazil, India, China, and South Africa, and they were at least at one time they were talking about creating their own kind of reserve currency. And a lot of other countries right now are really trying to dump the U.S. dollar. And if that happens, we're going to see just a major collapse of the dollar and probably a collapse of the world economy to an extent. And I think out of that, we are going to see a major push into like the technology of the future and the future 21st century. But I think it's just going to get that initial collapse of everything has to happen first. And from there, maybe there will be some hyperloops. Maybe there'll be some badass fucking airplanes that they kind of just they come in and eliminate all the old models and make it far more efficient. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see that transition. It's going to be like a whole new world. It's going.
Have you traveled on any of your travel in the last, like, let's say 10 years?
Last time I went on a plane, I think, was 2008.
2000. Okay, so I can tell you, I've been kind of traveling regularly, except for the pandemic, since like 2015, 2016. And I can, again, anecdotal, it's just me, but I can tell you that fucking, like, turbulence is definitely a lot worse today than it was, like, 5 years ago. I'm very, like...
What's the correlation there? What does that mean?
So what I'm trying to say is, like, think of heating up of the atmosphere, climate change, more carbon, effectively being able to... like, turbulence is way worse than it used to be. Especially, I live in one of the most turbulent, like, U.S. airports in the United States, Salt Lake City, because you have a mountain range here in the east, mountain range in the west, and you fly north and south. So when you fly north and south, the fucking, wind goes like this. And I can tell you right now, like, every single flight out or in is turbulent. It's every single one. But they're starting to get a lot more turbulent. So, anyways, going back to the Hyperloop, I just, if I can get from Salt Lake City to, let's say, New York City in, like, 2 hours underground, and it's the same cost as a flight, and it's not turbulent, I'll probably take that.
From Salt Lake City to New York City in 2 hours, do you think the technology is going to be there in a Hyperloop?
700 miles an hour.
Holy.
In a vacuum? Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely think
I've never really looked into that technology, but that's interesting. I mean, I know we were talking about the California high-speed rail thing, and that's kind of what I was envisioning. How doomed that project's been from the start, and
oh yeah, no, I don't believe
if someone like Elon Musk and like does manage to come in and get this shit done privately, it for sure could happen in that way. But if we're gonna leave it up to the public sector to start doing this, I don't believe for a second it's gonna happen.
I don't believe in the public sector at all, honestly. I just can't. Mm-hmm. Too much bureaucracy is pretty much it.
And it seems like Congress and the whole demographic in terms of the voting demographic is really going more progressive, especially as the big liberal inner cities grow and grow and grow. So it seems like they're definitely getting more progressive and electing far more progressive people that are coming into Congress, and now they're just making demands about things they're not qualified to have opinions on, like AOC, talking about banning planes and cars and things like that. And
the Green Plan. Yeah, the Great Green Plan or whatever
the Green New Deal, yeah.
Green New Deal.
It's not out of the realm of possibility that something stupid comes in like that. It's full of special interest bullshit, and a lot of people get rich. These retard progressives have no idea what's in the bills, and it passes, and it totally like before we have any kind of infrastructure in place to replace the old system. It just bans things that shouldn't be banned. Like, banning planes is a bit extreme, but they've talked about that. And just the fact that they're talking about this is concerning.
Oh, yeah. Well, so that's why technology is so great. Effectively, when I say technology is so great, I looked into there's going to be electric airplanes. I don't know if you've seen about this, but literally like a Tesla, but an airplane, and just like, going up and at them. But what's so funny about like an electric airplane is it's still, like Tesla, it's a coal-powered car, An airplane that's powered, like electrically, is going to be a coal-powered airplane, at least in the United States. I think definitely in China too, because most of their power is derived from coal. I think the only country that's really, really good is France with nuclear power. But I mean, I don't know. I think at the same time, just thinking as far as like, going back to the public sector and even going back to some of our original conversations about like the United States and China, and I kind of wanted to talk about this in our podcast, was we look at the United States today and the things that we're arguing about, Green New Deal, trans rights, all these different kind of like human rights. And then we look at China, who literally is run by a dictatorship, communist kind of party, literally has people in concentration camps. Like, we're up here, and the Chinese government's down here, but we're still superpowers. And I can't wrap my head around this idea, Jake, of are we doing the right thing worrying about what is a trans person when literally our superpower that is competing with us, China, is putting people in concentration camps like we did, 90 years ago, 80 years ago?
I mean, it's worse. It's worse than what we did 90 years ago, because they're actually using them as slave labor, and like what we did was fucked up and wrong to just kidnap people based on the race and put them in prison, basically.
For sure.
And
yeah.
I don't know what the conditions were like there. I'm sure they weren't great. But
oh yeah,
like I hate FDR, so I'm always happy to throw this in progressives' face when they try and say he was a great president.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he just threw a bunch of Japanese people in camps. All over the place.
So, but they're like using the Uyghur Muslims as slave labor there, and like beating them, torturing them probably. And I don't know how much of that we did here. But on a societal level, like, that's kind of something that should naturally be allowed to be discussed and be dealt with on a societal level. But the problem is it's being taken over on a public level, on a government level, and it is like being used to distract people and get people, one of those things that just gets people riled up as what I think is a distraction, while they go around and steal all our money and destroy businesses and let print money and devalue our money and destroy small business. It's like the list goes on of ways the government's fucking us over. And this trans thing is just, it affects such a small amount of people that it should not be dominating any national conversation at all. And it should just be something that mental health professionals are discussing and dealing with, and letting society just kind of naturally move into accepting it more, like gay people and gay marriage and those kinds of things. And allowing Congress to come in and start legislating speech is very dystopian and disturbing.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is like we have us, right? One superpower that's really worried about this, I feel like at the zeitgeist right now, is this, right? And I don't care, like whatever, like it's fine. And to see there is no zeitgeist in China, right? They're worried about, putting people in concentration camps that are Muslim. They're worried about literally taking away copyrighted information. The one thing that really makes me crazy, and not just China, I shouldn't say that, I should say the CCP, right? The actual communist party that's in control of the country, talking about, if we look at, Xi Jinping, sorry, he looked up to probably Mao Zedong. And Mao Zedong, the Sino-Soviet split, years and years ago during the 60s, where the Soviet Union was like, yeah, let's not put any nuclear missiles on Cuba. And China's like, well, fuck that. Like, death to the imperialists, right? I feel like not Mao, but Xi Jinping, the actual leader of the CCP, probably agrees with that. Like, fuck the imperialists, fuck the United States, the UK, France, Germany. And that kind of freaks me out, because I feel like that's the underlying message, right? We're worried about trans rights, which, fine. But then we have our superpower, that's our competitor, that's worried about fucking murdering us, like making us the servants. And that really freaks me out, especially, having a kid, right? Understanding that what kind of life is he going to live with that mentality as our main competitor, and climate change increasing the temperature. I don't know. It's just really interesting. Like, one is thinking here, and the other country is thinking over here, and I don't really know how to, comprehend that. Do we need to come into the middle? Or do we need to come over here and think about what they're thinking about?
So this kind of goes back to I like to talk about the elite, the global elite. I kind of think there's a concerted effort among the elite to bring about a one world order in the government. Like, everyone talks about the New World Order and everything. Like, that's a real agenda that they're trying to do. It's not even up for debate anymore. That's the goal of the elite, is a one world government. They've talked about it. They've all talked about it on record, and they get off on talking about it. You can see how excited they are when they talk about it. Bill Gates and all these world leaders, they get together every year, and they have these fucking Bilderberg parties and God, like those things when they go out into the forest, and I can't remember what it's called. That thing that Alex Jones got video of, and
burning an effigy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there are definitely people who are in our government, whether elected or not, that are working directly with China and the Chinese government trying to bring this about. I mean, China doesn't really give a fuck about us being alive or dead. I don't think they want to kill us, literally, but they do want to be a world superpower for sure. But they're going to do it in a far more intelligent way by economic means. So they're going to drop the U.S. dollar. I don't even know if they're still using it, but they will drop it if they're not, if they haven't already. Yeah. And they're going to bring about their own kind of digital currency. Like, they're going to start embracing blockchain technology long before we will. They've got their people under mass surveillance, so they will endure total control of their population. And that's the model that our government is going to start using to control us. And I don't know how directly they are infiltrating our government, but there's clearly a concerted effort by China to push us to go that way as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Which is really interesting. Alyssa and I were watching some of the new UFO, TMZ, funny enough, came out with a new mini documentary on the UFO report that came out with the Pentagon. And it's like, why is the Pentagon releasing information on UFOs now? What, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I know I'm kind of going on to the next topic, but looking at, every time I look at this and kind of the UFO stuff, I keep on thinking to myself, is it our own technology, or is it actual UFO technology? And then what is a UFO? Is it actual aliens? Is it us in the future just kind of watching us? And why would the Pentagon decide to go ahead and release something right now during the Biden administration? I feel like the Biden administration is just it's like the Carter administration. It's like you just fucking forget about it. Who cares? So let's go ahead and release the UFO information during that time.
Well, there's a lot of theories about this. One is that it's a distraction from how horrible things really are. If you look at inflation right now, it's disturbing. No one's talking about it. I mean, they're starting to talk about it because they have to, but it's going to get real bad soon.
Yeah, agreed.
There's another interesting theory. I told you about the documentary I saw where the government was going to stage a fake alien invasion. I don't know if I believe that, but it was a really compelling documentary. But then after I saw that is when all these UFO disclosures started coming from the government in an official capacity, and it was really bizarre. And they said that that was going to be the start of that whole false flag of the alien invasion, was the release of all these things, and eventually the government was going to acknowledge that they're real, and then they were going to stage an alien invasion and bring about the one world government. The world was going to unite against the aliens. We would defeat the aliens like Independence Day, and we'd all become one. So that's another interesting theory. And if you look at the comments, it's in the YouTube videos, on the mainstream media, if you look through the comments on them, a lot of people are talking about the staged alien invasion that's coming. But like even
Which is-
if you think about it just being a distraction from inflation and how bad things are, no one cares. Like nobody cares about this really to any extent. Like everyone's just like, oh, post 2020, the government's releasing stuff about aliens and UFOs. Not that surprising, really, considering how things are going. But they've been starting to release stuff. They started to release stuff in Trump's administration.
Oh, that's right, they did.
So
I do remember
it's been a
that.
couple years. A lot of people too think it's just to drum up publicity and funding for Space Force.
That's interesting. I don't really see that. I feel like Space Force should have been a force like 40 or 30 years ago when we started launching satellites like it was going out of fucking style.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really fascinating. I mean, it's really funny to me. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but the deja vu that I kind of get, like I'll dream about something and it's very real to me. I've had dreams where I look up into the night sky and I can literally see a starship like coming around, and I'm like on the ground with an M4. I know that sounds silly, but I've had this recurring dream a couple times, and to think like that's fake, like some sort of like enemy that's we're gonna go ahead and fight, I can totally see that, absolutely. Because if there's one thing that's united humanity for years and years and years, it's like a common enemy. And sorry, Lola's barking at something back there. I don't know. We'll see. Let me go ahead and mute for a second. But I don't know. I think, is it actually legit? Maybe. I kind of actually think it is legit, because if I wanted to go ahead and like unite a whole bunch of humans, I would do that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've talked about aliens before, right? Like I believe they're real, but I don't think their intent is to harm us.
Why would they care? Why would they harm us? I mean,
Yeah,
I think they would observe us.
Yeah, for sure. And like, there's a theory too that like the UFOs are kind of like they're coming in, and it's like we're like, imagine us walking into a chicken coop. I saw this exact metaphor on some podcast. I don't remember who it was, but it's like us coming into. Oh, I think it was on Tim Pool's podcast with Michael Malice. It's like us. It's like us going into a chicken coop, and the chickens be like, "Oh, what the fuck are these humans? What is going on here?" Whereas the UFOs are just like they're coming in to observe the zoo or whatever they view us as, and we just don't know what we're seeing.
Which is a funny analogy about chickens, because chickens eat fucking rattlesnakes, and you always think like rattlesnakes are these badass creatures, but chickens could easily eat the shit out of them. Like humans, right? You see like a polar bear and you're like, that's fucking badass. Like if I was an alien and came to the planet Earth, like, oh, polar bears, it's fucking crazy. And then you see somebody shoot it as an alien, like, oh wow, those guys are the badasses. Like I remember distinctly as a kid seeing chickens eat a rattlesnake. I was like, holy fuck, rattlesnakes, well, they suck. Chickens are it. And I would imagine aliens coming down to Earth again, right? I mean, we have cities and everything, but seeing like a polar bear getting annihilated by one of us, like, oh, that's like a peon. Like, who cares? But ooh, they're interesting. Let's go ahead and check them out. I honestly don't think that any Type 2 or especially any Type 3 kind of civilization would really care about us and the Earth unless they needed the resources out of the Earth. And I think lucky for us, I don't think we have like insane amount of gold or palladium or whatever else stored in the planet that other planets don't have. And also, you know, the universe is so vast that there's so many planets that they can go ahead and harvest. Do you think that there are aliens, or do you think that we're the only one civilization to go this far?
I don't believe for a second that we're the only civilization, certainly not in the whole universe. But like I've told you, like in the very first podcast we talked about, I was meditating for like an hour and a half.
The beings.
I had a conversation with an interdimensional being, and like you could say it was a dream or whatever, but it was as vivid and real as real life is right now, and it was very intense. We talked about some very intense shit that was right over my head. I never would be able to comprehend or repeat. Talking about space-time and the way space-time was in this dimension we were in, and it was really an intense, surreal experience. And I mean, I'm inclined to believe that it was real, and the being I was communicating with was real. That's only happened once. So and I wasn't on any drugs or substances or nothing. And so given that knowledge and seeing that and now seeing all this UFO stuff going on and it's interesting to see those two things kind of collide like that.
Well, it's kind of like, are they interdimensional? Are they in the same dimension but just, coming from a different plane of existence? Well, I guess that's kind of saying the same thing. I don't know.
The way he described it to me was the dimension we were in, right? It was like on a platform and some kind of thing outside of a planet. I could see through a window or something, and he took a step, and he was explaining like the rules of the dimension we were in. He took a step, and he's like, right now, or he's like, he stood in a spot, and he's like, right now I'm in one space and one time. Then he took a step, and he's like, now I'm in a different space and a different time. And then he took a step back to his original spot, and he said, now I'm in the same space and the same time as I was before I took that step.
Oh.
So it was it was a physical manifestation of time in this realm we were in. You could actually walk through time and back through time in a physical location. Time was in a physical location in this realm.
So if I had like a stick figure and a clock, right, and I went this way, the clock would be different and the stick figure would be different. But if I went back, it's the same.
In that particular instance, yes.
That's interesting. What else happened? Or is that all you remember?
I was just sitting there, and he was just unloading a bunch of shit. Like, that's the one thing I could grasp to a large extent that has stuck with me all this time. As soon as I came to, like, I journaled a lot of shit. I'm going to have to go find that. I've got it somewhere, but I don't remember what the fuck else he said. He unloaded a lot on me. But I had a roommate who was into all this stuff at the time, right? And, like, he had talked to me a lot about, like, the interdimensional beings and the aliens and stuff. I was like, okay, dude, whatever. And then, like, I had this experience, and I talked to him about it. I described the being, and he went and pulled up a picture of it. He's like, is this what it looked like? And I was like, holy fuck, that's exactly what it looked like.
Really? What did it look like?
It was, like, kind of blue or purple, and he had elf ears.
And how tall was he, or she, or it?
I'm pretty sure it was a he. He looked tall, like a normal, like a normal human size, probably 6 feet or something.
Okay. That's interesting, about 6 feet. Well, I always had this thought that, like, Foo Fighters in the Second World War, going to go bomb shit, I always had this, like, internal feeling that that's not aliens, that's us. That's a third grade class in 4000 AD watching us during the Second World War. Hey, class, let's see what's going on in the Second World War. Let's see what we were doing, or the United States was doing. I always feel like that. And I mean, if you even go back to antiquity, and I have no exact, like, examples, but there are examples through antiquity where they talk about, like, beings or things looking at them at, like, very, very interesting points of time, right? Like the Battle of Alesia with Julius Caesar. He's depicted talking about this. And the Battle of Alesia is fucking insane, right? He built a fort around a fort to siege somebody. And then he was like, oh shit, I'm going to get sieged, so I need to build another fort around a fort. Can you imagine being a fucking history teacher talking about this today? It's like, yeah, that's not so cool, but in 4000 AD, let's go ahead and check them out. Let's go visit them. I mean,
that's fucking interesting. That's really interesting.
I think it's us. I honestly think it's us looking at ourselves. But again, it's not so cool, Jake. I think it's like a 3rd grade, 8th grade, 12th grade classroom. Literally gonna go ahead and check us out. So, I mean, that's what I would do if I had that technology and I had a 12th grade classroom and I'm like, I need to keep their attention of all these 17-year-olds. Let's get into the little time machine and actually go watch it. There's somebody getting gored. There's all these people getting gored. There's Julius Caesar. He's 5'2". Do you think he was 5'2"? No. So I, but then that kind of raises the question of, are there people watching other people in 4000 AD from 8000 AD? I don't know.
Could the then this gets into the time travel paradox. Could them coming back and viewing us and us witnessing them and reacting to what we're seeing cause ripples in the timeline and cause things to divert trajectory, or is it already factored in that they were coming back and we're already on that path, having factored in what they're going to be doing in the future when they come back to view us?
Well, let's talk about Alexander the Great, right? He died at like 35. And some of the things that made him die at 35 seem a little suspect. This is really tinfoil hat. But he conquered Turkey. He conquered the Middle East. I mean, one of the craziest sieges I've ever seen in antiquity is called the Battle of Tyre, Tyre, little island off of Israel. Check it out, it's insane. And then he conquered Persia. But when he conquered Persia, so like Iran, Iraq, what was really crazy about it is he started getting the influences of it, and he started really seeing shit. And I'm like, why the fuck did this Greek badass started seeing shit in Persia? Why? And then why did he start taking on the culture? I mean, the Persian culture's been around for a long time, but... And then he fucking dies on the way back at 35. I'm just like, that's kind of a shitty... I don't know, it just seems so shitty. Either A, humans are shitty and great at the same time because Alexander the Great. But I don't know. I sometimes think, like, what made him steer that way? Did you imagine somebody, again, 4000 AD coming into, I think this is 260 BC? Dropping it on Alexander the Great and being like, the Persian Empire is amazing, and like blowing his mind. I don't know. And now he's like a fucking outlaw in 4000 AD. We need to take this person over because he fucked up the timeline. But this is our timeline now, Jake. And if we understand all those kind of interdimensional beings, and time is here, and time is there, and time is there, we could be on the same path, but we're on our path now, and this motherfucker in 4000 AD fucked up this path. Did he fuck up just our path with Alexander the Great, or did he fuck up all the other paths? I don't know.
Yeah,
that's kind of a long exposition, but I sometimes feel like that might be it, and I can't prove it wrong otherwise.
Well, you can't. We'll never be able to prove this shit except just wait it out and hope that we just reincarnate 4000 AD or whatever. Yeah,
that's true. That's very true. And that kind of freaks me out. Like, we have 4000 AD. What do we look like then? And then are we going to be smart enough in 8000 AD to not do that shit? Because I feel like we would.
Mm-hmm. Where are we even going to be in 8000 AD? There's no way like we're going to be confined to this planet unless we really fuck things up. But I think for sure we're going to transcend Earth and even this solar system and eventually this galaxy, not that far in the future.
I think even like the next generation, I think in the next generation or two, we're going to see the very first person that will transcend out of their body into not to an artificial intelligence, but into another, metallic body.
So an artificial, like an artificial body, like their human consciousness into an artificial body.
Yeah, they talk about the singularity of like AI, their computing power being the same as a human brain. That's going to happen in our lifetime. So taking that kind of processor, but then taking like your brain, Jake, into that processor and then just lumping it into an artificial body. I think our generation, or maybe even one or two, in the next 4, I feel like that's going to happen.
Do you believe in the existence of a soul?
That's an interesting concept. I think we are the determiners of a soul. And I think when I say we, I think any artificial intelligence or us believe what a soul is. Like, I think Rene Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. Yeah. I mean, if an artificial intelligence said that during the Turing test, that's a soul. which is kind of spooky since we're so close to it, but we're not there yet. But I think once an artificial intelligence really believes that and understands that, that's definitely a soul. Soul.
Maybe too. Do you believe in the Elon? I think it's the Elon Musk theory about like the Skynet shit and the machines becoming self-aware and wiping us out.
We are the organic birth child to the synthetic revolution. Yeah. But this is the thing with that, is he's really fatalistic about it, but I'm very optimistic about it. I'm extremely optimistic about it. When I'm able to go ahead and drill a hole into my head and link in via Neuralink, I'm doing it.
That's all because you do. I'm staying the fuck away from that.
I want to be one of the first. I don't... Well, one of the first. Maybe one of the first million. But I just... I don't want to be left behind. And I think it's going to be, Skynet, right? In the Terminator movies. It turns on, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, humans are fucked up. Nuke the humans. Like within a couple of milliseconds or a couple seconds. I think there will be something like that. But it's like you have no access to nukes. And it's got to figure itself out. And I think what's really weird about this is we're going to be considered the god to this robot. Because, and that's the one thing that really freaks me out, Jake, is there's no, pop culture around that. You have Terminator that talks about, we are the birth to this. Elon Musk talks about the birth of this, but, we haven't talked about being the actual God, the creator, right? And I think that's, a very non-human thing to be we are not the creator. I don't know. And that kind of disturbs me that we don't even think about that. We are the creator to the synthetic revolution. We are going to be God to these people. What kind of God do we want to be? Hopefully a good one. Because if we're a bad one, we're going to get fucking nuked. by Skynet.
I mean, that's true. And I don't know how much I agree with that. It's kind of... I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
I just want more pop culture, videos, movies, novels.
You could make a whole movie or TV show about that premise of we give birth to AI and they view us as gods and the social and societal ramifications of that, and I think it'd be pretty intriguing. I just don't know how realistic it would be given what we know about humans. I think are inherently good, decent people, and they look out for each other and protect each other, and that comes from consciousness and being conscious and aware and being empathetic beings. And I just don't know how much a robot can actually do that. And I think it can get to a point where technology advances enough that they could feel these emotions that we feel. But starting off, once it becomes once it becomes a true artificial intelligence and is able to do its own thing, I don't know if it's going to have that capability.
Well, you could always limit it to not accessing the internet, and then it becomes a baby. It becomes like a child, right?
I don't believe that we'll be having put limits on any artificial intelligence that we create, though. We're gonna let it go, and we're gonna let it do its thing, and it's going to start taking over different aspects of decisions on a societal level, especially in government. And this thing is just going to start taking over more and more and more, and it's just going to spiral. Well, and I don't know. I don't necessarily believe it's going to be horrible, but it definitely has the potential to be.
Well, that's why we need to interface with it. That's why we need to have our own cybernetics with our artificial intelligence being that we produce. Because if we're not at the same level of computing, this fucking thing is going to look at us and be obsolete. Fuck that thing. I can use all these resources in this planet a lot better than he or she. But the only way that we can get to that point, and this is what Elon Musk talks about, but he doesn't really express, which is unfortunate, is in order to be at that same level of that synthetic revolution, we need to be at that revolution as well, partially. Like, we need to have our own kind of connections to the internet and etc. Like, it's kind of like, instead of having the kid at 18 or 16, let's go ahead and be ready for the kid at like 30 or 35, right? Let's be ready and be mature enough so when the kid comes, we're good to go. And that's how I kind of see it. And that's how he should be saying it, but I don't think he says it successfully. But, you know, if you kind of read between the lines, he does. But, I mean, to kind of answer your question, I think we are birthing that artificial intelligence, and I hope that when we birth it, we have kind of the same kind of computing power as it does. Because I think it will have a soul. I mean, I'm playing a game right now called Per Aspera, Through Space, and it's talking about an artificial intelligence that colonizes Mars. Because instead of sending humans to Mars, we send an artificial intelligence to Mars, and it builds a base, terraforms Mars, and then it gets ready for humans.
I don't know, dude. Like, I just think about NPCs from video games, and that's what I imagine AI being. Like, they're just these soulless things that go around and they react to the world, and then maybe they can plug into the world and try and control it and manipulate it. But I don't see how they could have like consciousness and really be present in like within the body without being just so analytical into the world around it and plugging into that and reacting to it. I mean, I don't know. This is obviously just pure speculation, but it's just hard for me to like wrap my mind around the idea that you can create a soul artificially.
Okay, let's do a little thought experiment. Pacific Rim, the movie, right? You had the kaiju, which were big organic monsters, versus the big Titanic, you know, well, not American made, but just like the world made giant like metal monsters to defeat the kaiju. Well, at the end of the movie, remember when they send the nuke? It's literally people that just created organic monsters. And the thought experiment here is maybe the organic monsters didn't used to be organic monsters. They used to be actual metal monsters. So what if we took this artificial intelligence and we were able to kind of create flesh? And it wasn't a processor, it was an actual brain. So let's say we created another species, right? Does that still create a soul, or does that not create a soul?
Well, let's make it more simple than that. Let's talk about cloning. So,
okay, yeah.
So let's say we're able to replicate a human body to an exact, specific, precise degree. Like every single neuron and pathway in the brain is just microscopically identical. So would that create still like the same person, the same personality? And let's say like the original person died. I don't know if you believe in like an afterlife or anything, or reincarnation or anything like that, or if you die and that's it. But I'm inclined to think there isn't like an afterlife and there is a soul, and I just...
So when you say clone, do you mean clone as a baby, or clone as, 31-year-old Jake?
Well, if you clone it as a baby, that would change everything, because different experiences can create different pathways in the brain, and that could create a different person. But if you clone like a 31-year-old me, like right this second, and then produce him right next to me, is that going to be the same person as me? I don't know that you would. Even if you were to replicate it all the way, I think it would just be an NPC basically, which I'm more and more convinced are real on a societal level.
Oh, yeah. I know we only have 5 minutes left, but I was talking with Alyssa, so, ends with something a little bit lighter, right? We were talking about NPCs, and we were at dinner the other night, and some guy looked like he literally knocked into a wall. And we're like, oh, dude, NPC, 100%. That's totally an NPC. Like, he fucking glitched out watching us. And then I looked at her and, are you an NPC? She's like, are you an NPC? Excuse me, I always think about that too. if we are in a simulation and we needed to limit processing power, just like in a video game or a simulation that any college program would use or university, you need to limit the amount of actual the individuals in the program that utilize a lot of processing power. So, yeah, I could see the NPC kind of possibility being it.
Yeah,
but then again, I could also see like we're not even using like 1/1,000,000th of the processing power of this university, or excuse me, of this universe.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, just seeing the way people, I mean, that's getting pretty deep with it. The seeing the way people are reacting to things on a societal level, and just seeing people literally just adopt the same responses to things and the same kind of anger and emotional response that are just so out of the blue and just contextually make no sense. It's really making me question whether, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be that this is a simulation, although that would make sense given the context of NPCs, but just that there is like there's no like, and this goes back to what I was saying, like there's no soul or something there. There's no actual state of consciousness within that person. They're just running around and kind of reacting to the world in this kind of empty way that has no real meaning or impact whatsoever. And
There's only a handful of individuals that I can really have this kind of conversation with. Obviously, you being one of them. So, are the rest NPCs? Are they stupid? Are they not? I don't know.
I don't know either, and it's intriguing to try and wrap my mind around and think about, given like the way how ridiculous things are getting in the world. You know, everyone's been talking since 2012. People have been talking about the glitches in the Matrix and how weird things are getting, and there's different theories on that. Like there's glitches in the Matrix and the simulations collapsing. But then you hear theories about how we're transcending to a new level of like consciousness and kind of transcending like a lot of our negative human qualities like greed and things like that, and kind of rising above. Our faults that have plagued us throughout history.
Yeah, well, shit, dude. I think that's a good way to end the podcast, honestly. Jake, this has been good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Stay on the line for a minute. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Sounds good.
All right.